Number 13, Clemson is going to start up ACC play as they make the field trip down to Atlanta to take on the 23rd ranked Georgia Tech Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Noon kickoff game on ESPN. That's going to be, the biggest game that we see in that noon window early on. And this is a game that could absolutely reshape the conference narrative. The ACC off to a nice start thanks to what Florida State was able to accomplish. So now you see more teams in that picture in the representing the ACC in that title hunt than maybe expected. Now it's a matter of can Clemson get it together. We talked about them earlier in this long form episode tonight, talking about how Clemson really hasn't lived up to their preseason expectations. And that continued this past weekend. They had a gritty win. They did find a way to win. But let's be honest, it was an ugly win against a Troy team that probably shouldn't have any business from a talent perspective actually competing with you. So Clemson comes in. They had to rally from, at one point, was a 16-3 halftime deficit. And, they had some bigger performances. Adam Randall came off with over 100 yards on the ground. Brian Lesko was able to find a good connection with Cade Klubnik. He had almost 120 yards and a couple of touchdowns as well. They were able to generate multiple interceptions. And generally, the team did play a lot better in the second half. I do want to acknowledge that. But particularly the offensive line, those issues were still a problem. And it might be a very concerning problem if Clemson can't find a way to get it fixed sooner rather than later. Because the team that they have to go on the road to play up against is no Troy. These boys can actually play. And it's a team that could potentially have a breakout season. Because they came in unbeaten. And they have been explosive. They've been averaging close to 600 yards and 43 points per game. So we talked about how Clemson needs to figure something out offensively. They're going to need that offense humming because Georgia Tech, they're certainly more than capable of putting a lot of points on the board and putting it on the board quickly. Not to mention their defense. Everyone talks about the offense of Georgia Tech, but their defense silently having a pretty solid year as well. They've been ranking like in the upper half in terms of the power conference ranks across several key metrics. You want to talk about passing yards, rushing yards, like sacks, like pressure rates, those advanced metrics, right? Across the board, Georgia Tech is looking very solid defensively. Oh, and by the way, the red zone efficiency, you could not ask for a better red zone efficiency as well. 100% of the time, when they get into the red zone, it ends in a touchdown. You literally can't beat it. But this game is also important, not just because it's a top 25 matchup, and not just because it could really shape how things go in the ACC. But this is also a rivalry game. And this rivalry game runs deep. They've been playing this. They have almost 90 total meetings. And while Clemson has been on a hot streak as of recently, they've won the last 9 games against Georgia Tech. All time, Georgia Tech actually does have the series lead, leading 50-36 with a couple of ties thrown in there as well in terms of that all-time record that Georgia Tech has against the Clemson Tigers. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and check out the model, see what the model thinks. What does FanDuel think? Not that I'm sponsored by FanDuel, but FanDuel is just my go-to when it comes to betting purposes, so take that as you wish. So we've already seen movement on this line, interesting enough. I believe when the line first came out, I believe Georgia Tech was a 6.5 point underdog. Well, that line has moved quickly on FanDuel. It is now shrunk to 3.5 points as of the recording of this video. And yet our internal metrics saying that's not enough. Matter of fact, our internal metrics are saying wrong team is favored right now. Georgia Tech is a 3-point favorite according to our internal models. And let me tell you something right now. I'm actually more inclined to believe my model at this time. We talked about it quite a few times just in the preview and Even talking about the top 25 that was released from Redshirt Sports. Between the LSU game, as well as most of the Troy game, just to kind of put a bow tie on everything, I genuinely believe that Clemson is overrated right now. Plus, Georgia Tech, they certainly have the offensive firepower. And by the way, this game is in Atlanta. So them Yellow Jackets, they're going to have home field advantage, baby. The type of home field advantage and the type of offensive firepower that can make Clemson sweat. And unlike that Troy matchup, to be honest with you, Clemson doesn't have a significant talent gap. That doesn't exist anymore, especially in this era of college football. That's not a thing. So, I see a team that's riding high, carrying momentum, and they're at home, taking on a team that's kind of sputtering in the ACC play. They struggled against LSU. They struggled against Troy. And with all that happening in mind, not only do I think Georgia Tech's going to cover this game, they're going to cover the spread. I'm going to take it even a step further. Georgia Tech's going to win this game. And Georgia Tech's going to have some respect on their name. The AP doesn't rank them in the top 25, but we will. The country's going to see why on Saturday. Because I'm going with Georgia Tech winning outright, 28-24, and staking their claim as a legitimate contender to win the ACC.